Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. U.S. President Donald Trump said on Tuesday that he would decide whether to impose sanctions on countries buying Russian oil after an upcoming meeting with Russian officials. This comes as Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, arrived in Moscow today. As Europe ramps up its military support for Ukraine and Washington signals a sharper stance on Russia, questions swirl around the future of NATO coordination, U.S. sanctions, and Donald Trump's evolving role in the war's diplomacy. We now welcome our guest for more analysis. Ashton Cirillo, former sergeant with Ukraine's Defense Intelligence. Good to have you on the program. Welcome.
Good morning, Sasha, and good morning to all the amazing viewers in Poland and around the world. It's always great to be here.
Thank you so much. So let's begin with the main topic. Now, Steve Witkoff is in Moscow. This is not his first time there. Now, critics are calling him a little bit too much Putin-friendly, mirroring his lines. How much, let's say, are we close to that deal, that ultimatum that's delivered on Friday? Will this matter? Will this come to pass? Will we see peace on Friday?
The only person in the United States' voice that matters right now beyond the voters is President Trump himself. So whatever Steve Witkoff is talking to Putin about is coming directly from the Oval Office, and President Trump has made clear that he is tired of the games and the murder that Putin is carrying out against the Ukrainian people and the world at large.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I mean, Witkoff has been to Moscow before. There was an issue, I believe, last time that he didn't even have his own translator. Is he going to be more prepared this time around? Is he going to be tough enough that Putin will like listen to, as you said, Trump's own words, or is he going to be played by Putin the other way around?
You know, Witkoff is a New York real estate developer. Whatever he's trying to do in the geopolitical arena, he's doing, but hopefully the people in the White House have made him understand that Ukraine is both the only side that matters in this case, the Russians don't, and that President Trump's words and his communication with President Zelensky take priority over anything that the dictator Putin might be whispering in Witkoff's ears.
Mm-hmm. All right, we'll see how that. We're not sure how long he'll be in Moscow, but it's certainly going to be a very impactful few days. Also, I want to jump over. You said what matters is what Trump thinks himself. Thinking of Trump's base, there was a recent survey that a lot of his supporters now agree with the president, agree that tougher sanctions are needed on Russia, tougher role on Russia. Tell me what do you think about that, and if this really means that his base is changing, that Trump himself is changing on being tougher on Russia and Putin.
I believe President Trump is coming to the point where he understands that Putin has to be dealt with one way or the other. Many of his voters voted for what is a policy known as America First. And the America First policy that matters most to both the United States and the world internationally is that Ukraine ends up with a just peace against Russia in this scenario. And so his voters getting in line with what the president is telegraphing, both in his actions and words, make a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm. I mean, also what matters is a strong Ukraine on the battlefield. I mean, you have experience with this as well. You've seen that firsthand. Tell us a little bit more about this new drone deal on this conversation between Zelensky and Trump. He said this is pretty much ready to go. From a defense perspective, how much of an impact will this have on the battlefield going forward?
Well, if you look at what we would know traditionally as the line of contact or the zero line, it's been pushed back tremendously in both directions because of the advancement of drones. What used to be observational teams with drones, they can now attack 20, 25 kilometers behind where our frontline troops are. And so this drone deal is exceptionally important. It's also important because Russia's being able to be supported in large part by their vassal states, such as North Korea, Belarus, of course, China. Now we're seeing drone parts from India show up. And so any help that both the United States and the partners can give directly to the Ukrainian defense forces will go a long way towards evening out what the Russians are doing through their terrorism and their murder, especially in the skies.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's also diplomacy here at play. I mean, Zelensky said he had a productive conversation with Donald Trump. I mean, we have to look at the subtext to that. I think that's ultimately good news. What would that translate to in your mind when you hear words like that? What does that mean for the battlefield?
Well, it means on the U.S. side, and we're seeing countries such as Germany, the Netherlands, and some of the northern European nations already contributing to the U.S. defense sector with weapons being earmarked for Ukraine. We're also understanding that a couple of senators in the United States, bipartisan leadership, are looking to codify the mineral deal. What does that mean for the battlefield? It means something direct. It means the weapons necessary to push back against this faltering Russian offensive. And when it comes to the asymmetric warfare, it means a very clear attempt to strangle out the rest of Russia's weakening economy, and to do it in a way that's backed not piecemeal, but in an entire package. So President Zelensky, as the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, and General Syrski, the Commander-in-Chief, along with General Maluk and General Budanov, can carry out the answers that are necessary on the battlefield themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and speaking of weapons, I'm curious, as you mentioned, these Nordic countries, but there's also this new NATO scheme here from the Netherlands as well, about 500 million arms package for Ukraine, including Patriot batteries. So this is significant. I mean, is this comes through what happened during that NATO summit? I mean, there's a lot involved here. Tell us about what this will have an impact also on the front lines.
Sure. This is a direct result of the agreement that was reached between President Zelensky and President Trump, and obviously NATO with Secretary General Rutte. So your viewers understand, the European countries are putting together a pool of money. It's being put into U.S. arms manufacturing for weapons to be sent directly to the battlefield. Again, what this means is the end of questions over what's happening with the logistics chains. Is Ukraine going to be supplied with weapons? What's taking place? Is there a freeze? No, none of that. What it is a direct line from Europe and the United States to the battlefield in Ukraine, to the soldiers that need it at the front. And when it comes to the Patriots, as an example, the Germans are providing 2 Patriot systems under this program. We understand that Russian terrorism is an attempt to break the backs of Ukraine's civilian population. The more Patriot systems we have protecting the skies, the more we're able to concentrate on what's needed at the front to carry out the counter offensives and counterattacks that will push the Russians back from the positions they currently hold and force a just peace upon Putin and Russia.
Mm-hmm. I mean, the numbers here, I mean, still, it's great to see 500 million euros, but at the same time, some would say on the Ukrainian side, that's still not enough. I mean, is this sufficient? Also, let's talk about the logistics of that. When will this realistically then arrive? When will it be protecting Ukrainian skies? Like, walk us through the timeline here for all this.
Well, of course, it's never enough. Not to be ungrateful. I'm very grateful to the European taxpayers. I'm very grateful to the U.S. taxpayers for what they're doing on behalf of my colleagues here in Ukraine and the Ukrainian people. But more is better, especially when it comes to weapons at the front lines. Regarding the logistics, while Germany, as an example, announced that they were no longer going when weapon systems.
All right, we were speaking there with Ashton Cirillo, looking at the latest in terms of what's happening. Of course, we know that Steve Witkoff is in Moscow, just arrived today, and he'll be having some very important discussions with Vladimir Putin. And we're also talking about the whole weapon systems and also this major deal that is being pushed forward by the Netherlands, also through NATO channels. So, of course, we'll have more on that throughout the day. And with that, we'll conclude World Talks here on TVPO. But stay tuned, much more coming up right here. Don't go away. Goodbye.